are you?
I'm well. How are you, dear?
I'm doing great. Doing great.
I think I'll cheat a little bit because the sun is up. So let's do this.
All right.
Yeah, I cheated. You know, my album is Troublemaker. So
Ah,
and I love the intro with Corey, with making doing what kids do.
mm-hmm.
That just I got goosebumps. That just tickles me.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
long time ago, I was a musician, winger, but wound up in the record business and radio and all that other stuff. But anyway, we're not here to talk about me. So who is Reagan Whiteside? Let's start with that.
I'm a flute player. I'm a flute
You mean
player.
you're not a flautist?
Depends on the day. Yeah, I'm a flautist, flute player. I play the flute. And I'm a mom. I am a wife. I'm a tech geek, and yeah, and
And a radio personality.
a radio personality. Yes.
You know I
Yeah.
wasn't going to let that go. I got to get a plug in for my boy.
Mhm.
I am just tickled that we had this opportunity to get together. I know you've been at this thing since what, 2007, when you burst onto the scenes and started the record company with your husband and all that other stuff that I read about because I had to go dig. I was like, okay, who is Reagan Whiteside? I know the music, I know that album, but who is she? And so it was a joy to go back and listen to that Troublemaker. And I wondered, was did you have the title before Corey got involved, or is
No.
Corey actually the Troublemaker?
Oh yeah. Well, Corey definitely contributed a lot to that album, but not the name. The name actually came about oh a day before we went to mastering, and it was one of those things where we did the whole album and it was just unnamed the entire time. It was just a lot of different funny working titles, none of which I can actually say on the air. But but Dennis came up with treble maker, so it's treble as in I play. The flute is a treble instrument, and treble maker. So yeah.
Absolutely. So you got your first flute by accident. I kind of understand how that works. You went in the band and that was the last instrument they had left, or what?
Yeah, yeah. I played violin and piano and whatnot, but there was a parade that went through the town that I grew up in Mount Vernon, New York. And the parade had all of the different schools, the bands, the elementary, high school, middle school bands, and they would march through the parade and through the city. And with the violin. So when I got to the fourth grade, the band teacher, Larry Bibb, came around and he was recruiting, and I wanted to play the drums, and he was like, "Well, we don't have enough drums.
I have
Boys want
drums.
to." And I eventually did learn how to play drums, but I said, "Okay, well, I want to play the trumpet then." Well, we don't have any more trumpets. So what do you have left? The flute and the clarinet. And I was like, well, I guess I'll just take the flute because it's a smaller case. So, and it took me a week to get a sound out of it. And everybody else could get whatever little sound they can. Me, nothing, nada. And, but once I did, I was like, hey, this is kind of cool. And I started to like it and I kept playing it and getting better. And, and it was, the rest was history.
So when you got that flute in your hand and you
Mhm.
finally got a note out, what were your parents? What was their reaction? Were they receptive to the flute, or
Oh,
what?
yeah. Look, they were just happy to not have to listen to that little half-size screechy violin anymore. So that thing was loud and scratchy and screechy, and it was just like swinging a cat around. What can I say? I was 8, so they were very happy that I switched over to flute. Much much
So
more mellow tune.
yeah, I saw also that you said your uncle was very influential in pushing you to into that. You want to talk about him for a minute? Because I actually I have recently received a book from a friend of mine who was closing out his father's affairs.
Mm-hmm.
It was a book by cousin Bruce Morrow. And the name of the book is called Doo-Wop.
Ah.
Yeah. So I went looking for the cleft tones.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. He was in the Cleftones all the way up until he passed, and he was. I mean, he sang just about everything, and he was making albums out of his house way before it was popular, way before the internet and tools and whatnot. And so he was really inspiring, putting out his own music. And he actually got me my first 4-track recorder with a cassette tape. And I worked the mess out of it,
Learn to bounce the tracks.
Oh yes, yeah, mm-hmm. Yes.
I heard you say you were kind of geeky, so we speak the same language.
Yes. I am definitely like tech nerd number one. So yeah, that was definitely the beginning of, learning about recording and everything. And years later, I did a session with Bob Baldwin, and it was like really one of my first professional times in the studio. And
was that the jingle?
Yes, that was the jingle that I did for CD 101.9 back then in New York. And so Bob was showing me how to make the transition from classical to jazz. And Dennis, who owned the studio, was showing me everything there was to know about running a studio, how to run a session, how to make music with computers, everything MIDI, audio, everything but splicing 2-inch tape or 1-inch tape, because by that point everybody was doing it in the computer, so you could just It was really simple.
I'm a razor. I come from that razor blade era.
Yeah. I don't know how y'all did that. That would drive me nuts. But yeah, so I got quite the education during that period.
Yeah, talking about then and now, I saw a clip on Instagram where these two little girls, I guess they were at their grandma's or somebody's house, and they had a regular phone, and they were like, "Well, what is this?" And they were like freaked out, like, "So go to dial a number." So they dial a cell phone number, and they say, "Oh wow, it's ringing!" And they were like freaked out,
Was it a rotary phone?
The one was a push button. Well, actually, they were both push button. One was a wall unit.
Mm-hmm.
One was a desktop unit. It wasn't a Princess phone. I don't know if you know what that is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
but it was a push button phone. So they were like freaked out. And I was like, oh my, how technology has changed.
Yes.
And how, speaking of technology, how did you make the transition from the acoustic environment into the technical environment? You said you were geeky, so throw that out there. Was it an easy transition for you?
It wasn't. It really was. It was so. Everything was really more. By the time I really got deep into it, a lot more technical. Everything was in the computer, so it opened up a whole new world for me. And so I was just like, "What? You mean I don't have to press all these buttons and go back and rewind and all this stuff? I could just like mouse over and it's like there." I had zero problems. So it just made everything go so much faster.
You had it all in your hand.
Yes.
You didn't have to push this button and rewind and then make sure the tape was where you wanted it to be. You didn't cut it in the wrong place, that kind of thing.
Not at all. Not at all. And of course, being able to have like pretty much unlimited tracks, that by itself is like, hey, all right, I don't have to like, okay, well, maybe I can bounce the drums and the bass down, and then I can, do this over here. None of that. And just pull up a new track and just go. And so that's really great.
So in you've got what, 6 albums now?
Yes.
6
Mm-hmm.
albums. Okay, so and what was the progression from your first album to this album in terms of musicianship and pulling people in and how the tracks are recorded and all that kind of stuff. I guess it probably didn't hurt that your husband was an engineer, producer as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Did
yeah.
you get blessed?
No, yes, yes.
So did he, I'm sure.
But he wasn't my husband until the second album. No, no, no. In between the first and second album. But yeah, it's I like listening to the first album because it definitely reminds me how far I've come. The first album, I was still finding my way out of that classical box and trying to learn how to break every rule that they told me that I shouldn't break. And
Yes.
so I was able to, with every album, every project, kind of take more steps out of that box and just keep growing and finding my vocabulary, if you will, for improvisation. And it's a journey. I don't think there's one musician out here who doesn't continually work on expanding their vocabulary.
Absolutely.
So it's just constant growth, and I love it. That's I never want to stop learning and growing, and so it's nice to have a record of that growth to see where I started and then where I am now, and then 10 years from now, where will I be, if I'm able to continue to grow and learn and experiment and stuff like that.
I think that's one of the joys of being a musician. I think if you first and you were started out as a classical musician, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
so you learned the structure and theory and the difference between the eighth note and the half note and all those other notes.
Mm-hmm.
And I've often heard it said, first we have to learn all the rules.
Yes.
Then we go break them.
Right.
and that's what jazz did.
Yeah, that's exactly what it did.
That's exactly what I think. That's what jazz did, and made new rules.
Yeah, yeah. Make no mistake, there are rules. Everybody goes in there and says, "Oh, well, I could just play whatever I want." I can't. Nope.
Some
those two notes.
Some notes just don't go together.
Right.
You got D major, D minor. You got augmented. You got this one, that. Some of those notes they don't. You can hit the keyboard.
Yeah.
Or, close all the holes and the valves, and no, that doesn't sound right.
No. I mean, unless you're intentionally trying to make someone wince, which depends. If you're scoring a horror movie or whatever, dissonant, chords and whatnot, and in that case, that's fine, and depending on, the stuff that you're writing, sometimes that dissonance actually does work. But when you're doing something where it is not calling for that type of dissonance, and then you're creating it anyway, yeah, you might want to revisit that and rethink it a little bit.
I think it's kind of like, you're playing with the band and you guys, you vibe off each other, one another, whether he's going to go up or down. And one of you goes completely the other way, and it was like, okay, well, we got to catch up.
Yeah.
Like bass player and the drummer are right there, but everybody else is doing other stuff. And it's like, oh man, this is crazy. What do we do now? But you just enjoy yourself, and I think sometimes bouncing back from that bad note, the rest of the band is like, oh man, she hit a bad note, but she came back like a soldier.
Yeah. Or you just do like what Miles Davis said: if you hit a bad note, hit it again. So
hit it again. Yeah. Find some place to put it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let's see here now. So you've got 6 albums. Each album has a different thing going on, I think, from what I've listened to. Again, I get goosebumps a lot when things do touch me. But I listen to that funk groove thing that you got going on. It's just like, yeah, that's me right there. That's my driving music. How
Yes.
did you? I know the Mad Hatter. I call him Mel, the producer here, guy. Sent you out the questionnaire, and as much as I want to go to that questionnaire, I'm having more fun just having just regular conversation with you. But how did you this is almost like a dumb question, I think. Well, did you have concepts in mind, or did you just like, you know, your husband was doing something and you go, oh, hey, what's that? And then you go in there and go, hey, what's that? Wait a minute, and grab the flute and start putting it together. Because there's so many ways to do this, you know.
There's a whole lot of hey, what's that going on in this house? I will be walking past the studio, and Dennis is working, and he's writing some kind of thing, and I'm like, wait, whoa, 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 go in there. What's that? That's for me, right? That's for me. Yes, that's for me, right? I said that's for me. I don't care who it's for. Write him something else. I like that one. So, and then I'll just start, playing something to it, or he can even come up with a track that he doesn't like that he's getting ready to scrap, and I'll be like, hold on a minute, you know, if you take it this way, and then it turns into something else. And he does the same thing with me. I'll be upstairs, working on whatever track that I'm trying to pull together, and he's like, that, bring it downstairs. Let's develop it. So,
So
you
we
know,
don't lose it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Seriously. So, yeah, it's a lot of collaboration, and I love it.
Have you ever been driving in your car and a melody comes to mind and you start humming,
Oh
and
yeah.
you and then like you want to go, say, oh, I'm gonna do that, and then you
Hmm.
forget it.
you know, Usually it happens in the shower more than the car. Um,
Right.
and then I just have to kind of stop, and it's like, okay, I'll either just keep humming it until I can get out of the shower and, get to some place where I can write it down, or, I'll try to sing it into my phone, immediately, trying not to get my phone wet.
You gotta
And
drive, right? You gotta
try to,
keep the old cassette, the old cassette recorders,
that's not a bad idea.
small or the small ones, like
Hmm.
used for interviews. Keep one
Hmm.
of them like outside of the shower. You can dry your hands real quick and put the
Just,
notes in there, and then
yep,
put it back. It's like, yeah, okay, I'll get back to that later. La,
right.
la, la, la.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, if you didn't become a musician, what would you have been? Did you
An
have any
actor.
desires
Actor.
at that early age?
Yeah. I would have been an actor. Probably something comedic, because yeah, I love comedy. I love comedy. I am probably the silliest person that you're ever gonna want to meet. But yeah, I would be an actor.
Is there a role out there that you thought you could have done easily or even better than the person who did the role?
Oh gosh.
If
Yes.
you if you could go back and grab a role, what would it be?
Ooh, that's um
And
hmm.
thought that, huh?
No. Mm-mm.
Would you be Diana Ross in Mahogany, or would you be?
No. I would probably do one of those like really super silly. um you know what I would have um Vanessa Bell, in Coming to America.
Coming to America,
Ooh,
right?
ooh, ooh. That is something that I would be,
Right.
bark like a dog. Arf! That's yeah, that would be my my
Well,
speed.
you have to put that on the
Super
list and let
comedic.
people know that you're out here. That down the road, that maybe there's a role out there for you somewhere.
Hey, I would love to do it. I have no shame. I will be as silly as you want me to be. So
I think you and I are going to be friends a long time because I do my Philly on too. But we'll
mhm.
talk about that in Atlanta. Uh, let's see here. When you so there is no is no, that's not what I say. That. You have a creative process,
Mhm.
and then you have whatever shows up, and then you put it together.
Right.
Explain how that works for you.
Well, sometimes you'll hear a melody, sometimes you'll hear a groove. Um, Sometimes it won't even be a full melody. It'll be four notes that have a vibe. And, you start putting it together, and 9 times out of 10, it'll go left. It'll end up something totally different from what you started out with. But, it's a good thing because, you're following your own vibe. You're following the feeling of the song. And a lot of the times, the song will just take on a life of its own. And so you're just following it.
Yeah,
So,
I get that. Yeah, as opposed to it following you.
right. Instead of you trying to, just kind of wrangle these notes together. No, sometimes the song, it'll just take on its own velocity. It'll take on its own thing. Um, and you're just like, okay, well, oh, this is where you want to go. Okay, then that's where we're gonna go.
I remember I was in high school trying to play everything I could get my hands on
Mhm.
in a band, and I decided I really wasn't feeling the saxophone, but I liked the flute, and the fingering is a lot,
Similar.
a lot similar, yeah.
Hmm.
And so this was back when Mandrill was out, and Coelho and all of that. So I was, but that didn't last long. I was like, oh, I'm back to the drums and I'll sing my notes. I'm good. speaking of singing, um, you've sung on all of your albums
Hmm. Except this last
except
one.
this newest one,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, it
How
was.
did that happen?
I don't know. It was like this album. It was just one of those things where it was so difficult to get together because now we have two kids. They're in school. They're 4 and 6. They're all over the place, and they need a lot of supervision. And with the pandemic and everything that goes around with it, it was just really hard to get this album finished. And by the time we got to it, I mean, the deadline just kept getting blown. I mean, we blew through deadlines at least 6 times, and then finally it was like, nah, this is it. This is the album. We got to go. We can't push this off anymore. This is it. And look back at it, and it's like, oh my god, we don't have any vocals at all. Not one background vocal on this album, and it felt weird. It was like, oh man, do we have time to throw something on there to finish it? No. So I guess the next album we'll have to do more vocals and that kind of thing.
Let me ask you. I think this is kind of a personal question, a little above the stuff we've been talking about. You mentioned the pandemic. Um, 2 years,
Mm.
2 years in the house. Um, you had your own studio. You were able to try to in between being mommy and Mrs. Johnson, trying to
Hmm.
to be Reagan Whiteside, the musician as well. What did you learn about yourself that you didn't know before? How did you grow? I mean, certainly you don't have to get into deep personal stuff, but I know I like being with me. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And as much as I've been outgoing and all over the place, the world, record business, yada yada yada, I'm comfortable being with me. And
Hmm.
so I'm curious as to how you managed and how did you grow from that? Because I
Uh,
believe sometimes our creator gets us by ourselves
yeah.
so we can hear.
Hmm. I learned that I'm not as much of an extrovert as I thought I was. I learned that I definitely need like me time just where I'm not talking to anybody. I am not communicating at all. I'm just with myself and just kind of just rebuilding my energy. Um, and how did I learn that? When when you're stuck in the house and everybody's stuck in the house with you, and I love my family with all my heart. Don't get me wrong, but I need 10 minutes. So, it was definitely, I was like, oh, okay, well, as long as I get that little bit of me time, I'm cool. Um, and I also learned that I'm a lot more resilient than I thought I was. So it's this whole thing is very interesting, and I'm really curious to see um, how my kids are going to remember this period. Because they were, when the pandemic started, they were 2 and 4, or
Mm.
1.5 and 3, or something.
So
They were really,
it was
they were
normal.
little.
That was normal for them.
Yeah, yeah. And so, like, now that they're, starting to get out a little bit more and experience things, just I'm going to be very curious to see how they look back on that time.
So you have one in kindergarten and one in
One in the first grade,
first grade,
and
one in pre-K.
and yeah, in pre-K.
So how are they interacting with because school's just starting, so it's really kind of hard to tell. But how are
Well,
they engaging their classmates?
oh, they're social butterflies. I mean, here in Georgia, school started the first week of August.
Hmm.
School goes back in very early here.
Right.
So they're already, gearing up for their first break. So it's like, already? Yeah, already. So no, they're great. They're loving it. They love getting out of the house. And I think it also makes them appreciate being home, now that they're always out and doing this and doing that and whatever.
Are you wouldn't happen to be in Gwinnett County, would you?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. I stumble. I've got family down there. I got friends down there. All of that. But one of them sent me a link about the school lunch menu in Gwinnett County and how it was like off the chain. They were having all kinds of fancy meals and this. And I was like, them taxes down there must be off the chain.
Yeah, it's definitely not the normal craziness that we might have grown up with. With just your standard peanut butter and jelly sandwich. No, they're getting exposed to some different types of food. That's for sure.
Okay, let's see if we can just go back to some music for a second. Right?
Hmm.
But everything that we just talked about influences our creativity in some form or fashion.
Oh, for sure.
I'm going to give you this one for free. Your next album's title is Reflection.
Okay.
And you can ponder all that time you were locked up in the house. All right. So, who were some of your early influences, musicians that showed up in your life that you went, oh, hey, I like that?
um, Dave Valentine, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he was just Mr. Bronx and very accessible. So, growing up in Mount Vernon was very close to City Island and Orchard Beach, and he was always out there on City Island playing at Tito Puente's spot,
Right.
and so I just go and see, and it was great. And I thought that, man, it's like if I could just play like that, when I was a kid, and I wanted to go more into jazz, but I was forced into classical music because they were like, no, you need to learn your technique and all that stuff. And so, all right, all right.
Learn the rules.
Yeah, basically. So yeah, but there was always a whole lot of music in my house, um, from Rick James to Johnny Mathis. I mean, it just ran the gamut. And when I got into my teenage years, I started getting into opera. And Kathleen Battle, I mean, she was just my idol. And a lot of the stage presence that I was able to develop came from watching her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she was just, I, we in high school, we were able to get tickets to the Metropolitan Opera dress rehearsals. and we got a chance to meet her and Luciano Pavarotti, and it was just, I mean, and I was like, I don't know, 13, 14, and so just watching these amazing singers and things that they were able to do with their voices, making it sound like an instrument, really. It was really, it was crazy, and I learned a lot, and it made me listen to music differently. Um, Groups like Take Six, really, I mean, I'm a huge Take Six fan. The harmonies are absolutely insane, and it was just, I have a very eclectic sense of music and what I listen to.
I don't think you're as old as I am, but it sure sounds like it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get me wrong, I grew up in the Mary J. Blige, Janet Jackson, the whole New Jack Swing era. So,
Okay.
I loved all that stuff too. But nobody was playing any instruments, like they weren't celebrating instrumentalists and stuff like that. So, I had to broaden my
You had to look
scope.
for it. You had to go
Yeah.
find the Crusaders and
Yes.
and Azimuth and those groups. You had to find them. Yeah,
Yeah.
I get
Yeah.
it.
Hmm.
I remember. Well, just for the record, I'm a product also of the Bronx and Brooklyn.
Aha.
So I get it. I've got friends from Mount Vernon, all of that. So I kind of know those places you were talking about.
Hmm.
But the influence on us of those of us who are fortunate to have parents who enjoyed music, who were able to afford a record player or a stereo. My job as a kid was to clean my mom's records.
Aha.
She had the spray and the cloth, and she had a rubber stamp. So I had to stamp her name on the records because when they had parties, my cousins, it was all family. My cousins would come and snatch my mom's 45s, and I'd go visit, and I'd tell.
Oh boy.
So yeah,
Uh,
I get it. Are your parents musicians at all, or were they just music?
they my dad would sing in the chorus in high school. My mom played trombone in high school, but nothing professional.
Trombone, yes.
Hmm. But they've just always, they've loved music like since forever. They
So music is in your DNA, so to speak.
big time. Yes. Mhm.
So now, how are your children? Uh, do they grab hold of things? And when they were little, did they like, no, don't do that. You're gonna break it.
I mean,
Inquisitive minds, I guess.
yeah, yeah, you know, they treated their instruments and continue to treat their instruments very well for the most part. For the most part, the drums, well, they got a little beat up, but
But
everything
that's
else,
what you do
they,
it to them. But so your kids have their
yeah,
own instruments.
yeah, yes, yeah. I actually got them. I got a little overzealous, and I bought them both a flute. Okay, so they each have their own flute. I got them a little, little cheap little student
Yeah.
model and everything.
Supposed to
But
get them a recorder, mom, not a
well, they
whole.
got that too. But they and we're trying to expose them to everything. But they see mommy playing the flute, so and they have their little recorders and pianos and
So do
xylophones
you have
and
you have a boy and a girl, or
a boy and a girl. Hmm.
okay? So you're like real parents. There was a comedian who once said that people who only have one child really aren't parents because when they come home and something's broken, they know who did it.
Right.
There's none of that. Ma, she stole my sweater. He's touching me. None of that going on in the
Yeah.
back seat.
Hmm.
It's just like don't unbuckle the seat. And that's about as much as you
Right.
get. So you got some gigs coming up too. You got one in
Yeah.
Philly tomorrow.
Hmm.
If I didn't have some other things I had to deal with, I would drive up to Philly and cheer you on. You got dates in Philly. I think I'll just put them up on the screen. You got dates in White Plains. Any other dates other than those four coming up?
We actually just came off of we've been running almost every weekend since the beginning of August. So this is like the end of our like end of summer into fall kind of thing. And we're just lining up stuff for next year. There's a couple of things on the books. I can't talk about them just yet because the contract isn't signed, but you know,
On the ink ain't dry is cool.
right.
Because I want to go into, we've got this is of course is the Source Radio Network. We've got this is the Jazz Confusion Power Hour, but we got listeners all over the globe, and so I'm curious to know, are you making any noise in any other countries, Denmark, Sweden, any of that?
You know, it's interesting. When I get my stats back from like Apple Music and Spotify and stuff like that, um, it's really interesting to see where things are bubbling up. A lot in the UK and a lot in Tokyo, which I was actually pretty surprised at. I didn't know that there was a like a soul jazz, contemporary jazz kind of scene, but apparently there is. So we're definitely working on trying to do some more international dates. You
Yeah.
know,
There's a lot of jazz musicians in Tokyo, in Japan. You go over there,
mhm.
you're gonna have a ball. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
apparently so. I mean,
I,
I kind of thought that it was like mostly like straight ahead mainstream jazz and everything, but you know, there it's everything. You know, and Korea as well.
mhm.
Um, it's pretty cool. Like there was somebody, some dancers who put up a video on Instagram to my one of my tunes, Jam It. And they were kind of doing this like slow mo pop lock to it, and it was really cool. And I was like, wow! And you know, you make music in your house, you know, in Atlanta, and next thing you know, people on the other side of the planet have found it and like it, and actually did this whole dance to it. And it's like it's really quite flattering, and it's like amazing. I love it.
It doesn't only make you smile outside, but it makes you smile inside.
Yes, yes.
Because your music, your creativity, the gift that our Creator has given you, has done what you would hope it would do, and that is to
Yeah.
inspire other people. It not just inspire them musically, but now you got someone who's dancing, done a creative dance to your music.
Hmm.
More goosebumps, and it ain't even my music. Yeah, it's nice to, it's one thing to hear somebody humming your tune, or you know playing, whistling or something,
Hmm.
but when they actually pick up their own instrument and they want to play your tune, um, it's like I think I heard, I don't know what album it was on, but my boy Will Downing, didn't you do a song he did? What's the name of that song?
Um,
If Oh God, I can't think of it.
I don't know.
There was
Was
this.
it was it on my album?
Yeah, I'll, it'll come to me. If it doesn't come to me in this conversation, I'll write it down, record
Okay,
it on the phone, and I'll tell you when I get to Atlanta next month.
could have been Porter Carroll. He was an original founding member of Atlantic Star,
Right.
and
Right.
we did a tune on the album
What was
together.
it? What was the tune?
On the dance floor.
Okay. No, it wasn't that. But
Okay.
I know who Porter is. I worked at RCA and A&M when Atlantic Star first did all of that. So,
Hmm.
they're not far. They were from White Plains or something.
Elmsford, I think, or White Plains, somewhere up there.
Somewhere
Yeah,
up
in Westchester. Hmm.
past Mount Vernon, though.
Yeah, yeah.
So how is the Spotify's and the all of that? How is that working for you in terms of exposure? Are you satisfied with the numbers thus far that you're seeing? Because you don't have a record company. You're not being distributed by someone. You
Right.
guys are doing this all on your own, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Spotify, Apple Music, they're all great tools for promotion and stuff like that. And it's interesting the way the whole thing works. If you're able to get on one of the editorial playlists, you get that much more exposure, and then you end up getting more followers, and that turns into your mailing list growing, and then people showing up to your gigs. So in that respect, it's really really great. I think though that um, the whole streaming platform and the business model and everything, I think that it is a work in progress in terms of um, making it work for everyone, and not just the few at the upper echelon who are getting the billion streams and stuff like that. Um, because basically what they did was combine radio and retail. And
Exactly.
so, when you do the two, I mean, yeah, the technology allows you to do that for sure, and it needs to progress. This is, nobody's sitting there with a gramophone anymore. No, you're just gonna you want to listen to music how you want to listen to it, but at the same time, um, I think that the business model probably needs to be tweaked a little bit to make it a little bit more equitable for
Well,
the content
I
creators and everybody else.
absolutely. I came up um, going to my mom sending me to the record store to buy this Isley Miller record or that record, um, and 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 I actually have some 78s over there.
Oh.
I was talking to, I have a 26-year-old daughter. My youngest daughter is 26, and she has, we laid it all out. She has every gadget from the iPod, the dog with the flapping ears thing, and iPod, MP3, all of it. She's got all. She still has all of that stuff. She still has.
Mhm.
But we were talking about, well, Daddy, I have a lot of records. So she's like, no, you can't get rid of those. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay, that's a good thing. But it just never ceases to amaze me how technology changed the game for musicians
Mhm.
who were aspiring to be, for lack of a better word, who were aspiring to be stars, so to speak.
Mhm.
That you talked about the merger of retail and radio becoming one, and record stores closing. Um, the game changed, and I think technology caught the record companies off guard. Not all of them. Certainly,
Mhm.
Sony wasn't caught off guard because I was working for Epic Records during that transition. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
Sony, they worked it out, and then I left Epic, and the next thing I know, Sony, Epic was a part of Sony, the whole
Mhm.
CBS thing. But there's so much to say for technology, and where could it possibly go next? What do you think?
Um, that's a great question. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe something that has more virtual reality combined with it. Like, all right, so the whole metaverse thing.
Metaverse, the whole AI thing.
Yeah, yeah, and doing concerts inside. Are they? They're not calling it Oculus anymore. They're calling it a Facebook Meta something. I don't know, but the VR thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Right.
doing more live concerts in there, having a more immersive experience, and being able to connect more with the audience, um, who has been listening to and streaming your music and stuff like that. So that's probably where it's heading. How they're gonna figure out how to monetize all of that, I don't know.
I've
That's
had
above my pay grade, but
I've had a couple of stories about if they ever figure out how to tax it, they're gonna make it legal. But that's a whole nother story.
that part. But
Yeah.
yeah. um, but yeah, and the whole, technology, it's really a double-edged sword because, on the one hand, it's like, wow, you have millions of streams, but you're not really making that much money. But at the same time, the other side of technology is now you can it is a lot easier to put out your own product now than it was, 10, 15, 20 years ago. So, it's like it's a balance and it's always evolving. But I am optimistic, that we're going to be able to create a business model where this thing is both sustainable and equitable, and
I,
fair.
I think the old folks used to say, and I've said oftentimes myself, where there's a will, there's a way.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
and, and if anything the mind conceives and believes we can achieve. So
Yes.
I guess the next thing is where do you think, or what do you like or dislike about the music industry as you once knew it? Because now
Uh,
you're your own boss, you got your own label. I used to tell artists, if you take care of your business will take care of you.
yeah. Yeah.
More often
Mhm.
than not, so many artists were out there, and I'm sure you know a lot of the stories, who signed away their lives,
Yeah. Yeah.
wound up penniless while everybody else was living off of caviar and yachts and all that other stuff. It's like, well, we
Hmm.
sold 2 million albums, but we're living in our cup.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, the industry is the industry, there's a lot of good, there's a lot of not so good, there's a lot of iffies. Um,
Yeah, there's industry and then there's musicians. So, you know,
yeah.
and I separate that. So
Yeah.
I'm talking about that part you were just talking about,
The business of it.
the business. Yes.
Yeah. It's always going to be something, you know. It's a game. It's a game, and love it or hate it, it is what it is, and you got to learn how to get good at it and learn how to discern between, um, what's good for you, what's good for your brand, and you know how you can make that work for both you and someone else, because that's really what it comes down to. It's got to be a mutually beneficial kind of thing if you're gonna get ahead and keep going and grow it and grow your brand. So I like the fact that anybody can get into it, and if they work it right, you can be successful. It's not just for the elite. It's not just for people with money. It's not just for I mean, it's just literally everybody. Now, at the same time, because it is literally anybody, you got to cut through a lot of fluff to get to uh, the heart of what you're trying to do. Um, you got to break through the noise. So it's hard to talk about with trying not to put my foot in my mouth and all that stuff.
Well,
But
let me help you because I can put my foot in my mouth.
oh my gosh,
I'm not gonna let you do that, but
I appreciate
I can put my foot.
it.
The one of the things that I've often told artists over the years that I've been in this business is that it's called music business.
Mm,
And that's why I say if you take care of your business will take care of you. You know,
mhm.
a lot of times I've seen acts who've hear themselves on the radio and they get excited and they're calling everybody and everybody's excited. I was like, no, get up and go to work tomorrow. You
How
know,
about
but
that?
we're number one on the chart. Okay, but are you number one on the sales charts?
Mm.
You know, how much of that is your money? You know, those kinds of what would be seemingly simple questions are a lot of artists have no clue. They just want to be able to go out and sing. That's all. I just want to sing. You know, I don't care about all that other stuff. But then they start learning that it is business and this is your livelihood, and you have to learn how to be creative and have a business mind. And so, you know, the new buzzword is brand. So you have to understand who you are and what you want to convey to the public. And I guess heading towards closing, what would you like to convey to the public about who Ragan Whiteside is and her music?
I do feel good music. I do feel good music,
Yes,
and
you do. Yes, yes, you do.
and I want people to be able to come out and enjoy a concert and feel good. You know, I want people to leave the show saying, "Wow, I really enjoyed that. I feel really good right now. I didn't think I was gonna like it, but I really, really did." You know, that's what I want people to feel when they leave one of my shows. And I'm all about the groove. I'm all about making sure that you can bob your head, you know, to
This
it.
right here.
You know, yeah, you know, you got to be able to, you know, and feel with me, you
Right, right.
know.
That feeling that you had when you went to that club and you saw Bob, is that the feeling you're talking about?
Yes, yes, that feeling, that night that changed the whole trajectory of my life.
It's like,
Yes,
yeah, I want to do that.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, thank you for your time. It was a joy talking to you. Again, Ragan Whiteside, you got some dates coming up. The 15th in Philadelphia, the 18th up in White Plains, October 1st, you're down in Alpharetta. Where in Alpharetta is that?
It's the Velvet Note.
Okay, and then you're going to West Columbia, South Carolina. Where's that gig?
So that's at Shay's Lounge. So I'm doing 2 nights there.
Okay, so we can check you out. Make sure you guys can check her out at Ragan Whiteside Music on Facebook, Ragan Whiteside on Instagram, and RaganWhiteside.com on the World Wide Web. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Soul Power Hour, Source Power Hour. We're just excited, and hopefully this thing will blast off to a bunch of people in all these countries that we go to, and they'll start bombarding you, and then you'll call us back, and we'll do it all over again.
All right. I love it.
God bless and have a fantastic day.
Thank you. You too. Thank you so much for having me.
All righty. Cut. Mel, where you at?